The easiest way to make a black woman feel small in public is to act like the proof in her hand matters less than the doubt in your voice. Nadine Brooks had learned that some people only trust systems when those systems lead to the answer they were already comfortable giving. Reservation not found. Card declined. Must be a misunderstanding. Try another name. Step aside, please. It was always amazing how often the mistake seemed to happen after they looked up and saw her. So when the car rental clerk at Skyport International smiled tightly and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that reservation doesn't exist," Nadine did not panic. She looked at the email in her phone, then at the line of waiting customers behind her, then at the clerk, because one of them was wrong, and she already knew it wasn't her. Before we get into it, tell me where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories about dignity, justice, and people getting caught the moment the receipts light up, subscribe and stay with me. Skyport International was chaos in polished flooring, rolling suitcases, delayed flights, children crying near baggage claim, business travelers pretending they were not furious, the sharp smell of coffee, perfume, and jet fuel still clinging to clothes from the gate. Nadine had landed at 8:40 p.m. after 2 flight delays, 1 gate change, and a 3-hour stretch in the middle seat next to a man who had treated both armrests like inherited property. She was tired in the deep way travel makes working women tired, where even your patience feels wrinkled. She was 37, sharply dressed even after a day of airports, with a navy blazer over a soft cream blouse and a carry-on that still rolled smoothly because she bought luggage the same way she bought everything else. Once, well, and without apology. She was a regional operations director for a healthcare logistics firm, and she traveled enough to know exactly how these nights were supposed to go. Get the bag, get the car, get to the hotel, sleep, work. That was why she booked the car 2 weeks earlier. Premium midsize, confirmed. Prepaid in part. Corporate discount attached. Loyalty number entered. Everything done exactly right. The rental counter sat beneath bright white signage near the garage shuttle exit. A half-dozen tired travelers waited in a zigzag line bordered by stanchions. One exhausted family argued softly in Spanish over whether they had packed the tablet charger. A white businessman in loafers kept checking his watch, as though impatience might produce extra cars. At the counter stood a young white clerk with smooth hair, a fitted company blazer, and the expression of someone who had already decided the rest of her night would be difficult because customers kept making it so. Her name tag read Tiffany. When it was Nadine's turn, she stepped forward, set her license and credit card on the counter, and said, "Good evening, reservation for Nadine Brooks." Tiffany typed, paused, typed again. The pause was longer than Nadine liked. Then Tiffany said, "Can you spell the last name?" Brooks. More typing. Another pause. Tiffany gave a small professional smile. "I'm not seeing anything." Nadine blinked once. "Try Nadine with an N." Tiffany did. Nothing. "Do you have a confirmation email?" she asked. Nadine already had the phone open. "Yes." She slid the screen toward her. Tiffany glanced at it, then back to the computer, then said the sentence with that particular customer service softness that always seems to mean the opposite of reassurance. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that reservation doesn't exist." Behind Nadine, somebody sighed loudly. She kept her tone level. "It does. You're looking at the confirmation." Tiffany lifted one shoulder. "This only shows a booking attempt." Nadine looked at the screen again. No, it clearly showed a live reservation. Pickup time, car class, rate, location, confirmation code. "It shows a confirmed reservation." Tiffany gave a tight smile. "Not in our system." There it was. Not an explanation. A wall. Nadine tapped the phone screen once. "The code is right there." Tiffany's fingers clicked on the keyboard with increasing impatience. "Sometimes third-party bookings don't transmit." "It wasn't third-party. I booked directly through your company app." Now Tiffany looked at her fully for the first time. Not warmly. Assessing. "Do you have the app login?" Nadine stared at her for half a second. "Yes." "Can you log in and verify?" There was something about the phrasing that hit wrong. Not because logging in was impossible, Because the tone suggested the burden had already shifted from system failure to customer credibility. Nadine opened the app, tapped twice. The reservation appeared immediately. Tiffany looked at the screen and said, nothing more. Nadine waited. Tiffany turned back to the computer. Well, if it isn't in my terminal, I can't release a vehicle. The businessman behind Nadine made another sound into the silence. Nadine slid the phone back toward herself. Get your manager. Tiffany's whole posture changed just enough to confirm what Nadine had already felt building under the exchange. A black woman asking for escalation had now become, in Tiffany's mind, the actual issue. There's no need for that, Tiffany said. There is. I'm telling you what the system says, and I'm telling you to get someone who knows more than that sentence. The family behind the businessman went quiet now too. Public scenes pull in witnesses long before they attract justice. Tiffany folded her hands. If you'd like, I can start a new walk-up rental. Nadine actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the insult had finally become obvious enough to stand up on its own. A new walk-up rental, she repeated. At the higher counter rate? Tiffany blinked. That would be the available option. Using the same reservation you just said doesn't exist? We'd create a different contract. Nadine looked at her license still sitting on the desk and felt that familiar heat rise under her skin. Not rage yet. Recognition. This was not confusion anymore. This was a choice. Tiffany was prepared to erase the reservation, charge her more, and call it a solution. Nadine leaned forward slightly. No, she said. We're not doing that. Tiffany's voice cooled. Ma'am, I'm trying to help you. No, Nadine said. You're trying to move me off the problem and onto a more expensive version of your mistake. That landed. A white woman at the next counter turned her head. The businessman stopped pretending not to listen. Tiffany glanced around, suddenly aware the room could hear the shape of this now. Please lower your voice. Nadine looked genuinely surprised for a second. It's lower than yours. Tiffany's jaw tightened. I don't have a reservation to honor. Nadine held up the phone. It has a pickup time, a car class, a barcode, my loyalty number, and a confirmation code. So either your system is broken or you're not doing your job thoroughly enough to find it. Which one do you want me to write down when I file the complaint? That did it. Tiffany stood up straighter. I'll call my supervisor. Good. The supervisor took a minute and a half to appear, which is a long time when the line behind you is growing and every person in it is now pretending they are not listening to your dignity get negotiated by strangers. He was white, maybe 50, thinning gray hair, dark tie loosened at the collar, expression already weighted in favor of staff before he knew the facts. Name tag, Rick Dunn. What seems to be the issue? Tiffany answered first. Customer says she has a reservation, but it's not in the terminal. Nadine said immediately, I don't say I have one. I do have one. Rick turned to her with the careful patience of a man who had been doing customer service too long and had started treating frustration itself as evidence against the person feeling it. Can I see the email? Nadine showed him. Then the app. Then the code. He squinted at the screen. Huh. That word sat there uselessly. Then he looked at Tiffany's monitor and clicked through 2 screens himself. Still nothing. Rick exhaled slowly. It may not have transmitted correctly. Nadine said, then use the confirmation code. He gave the kind of smile people use when they want to soften a condescending suggestion. Our local system doesn't always search that way. Nadine stared at him. You're a national rental company. Yes. With a reservation app. Yes. And a live confirmation code. Yes. But the airport desk can't search the confirmation code? Rick shifted. Not always. The businessman behind her muttered, That's ridiculous. Rick ignored him. Nadine looked at the keyboard, then at the supervisor. Try the code in the central lookup field. Rick blinked. Excuse me? The central lookup field. There's usually a back-end reservation retrieval option tied to active codes. I travel for work. I've seen your staff use it before. Tiffany actually looked offended by that. We know how to do our job, she said. Nadine met her eyes. Then do it. That was the moment the tension changed. Not because the system was fixed, because competence had become contested and the wrong person in Tiffany's mind was displaying too much of it. Rick said, "Ma'am, if you'll just give us a moment." "I've given you 11, Nadine said. "And every minute this stays unresolved, you're telling me that a visible confirmation means less than your first assumption." There it was again, not named as race, felt as race all the same. Rick clearly wanted this to become a normal, difficult customer interaction. He could survive that. He knew the language: delay, regret, policy. But Nadine was making the actual problem visible, and that made it dangerous. He finally turned to the terminal and clicked into a different screen. Tiffany frowned. "That won't—" Then the code hit, a soft chime, a page refresh, and suddenly the reservation filled the monitor in full. Name: Nadine Brooks. Status: confirmed. Tier: executive. Vehicle class: premium midsize. Payment: verified. Loyalty note: fast track eligible. The screen lit it all up so clearly that even from the customer side, Nadine could read enough of it to know exactly what had happened. Silence. Rich, complete, humiliating silence. Tiffany looked at the monitor, then at Rick, then back at the monitor. Rick's face changed the way faces do when public certainty has just turned to public error. The businessman behind Nadine let out a short, disbelieving laugh. The woman at the next counter actually said, "Wow." Nadine stood very still. Because this was the part people often misunderstand about vindication. It does not always feel satisfying. Sometimes it feels like being asked to stand politely while the room catches up to a truth you already paid for with stress. Rick cleared his throat. "Well," he said, "there it is." Tiffany said nothing. Nadine looked at both of them. "Yes," she said, "there it is." Rick forced a smile that collapsed under its own weight. "Looks like the confirmation code pulled it from the central system." Nadine almost smiled back, but there was no warmth in it. "The system you both implied wouldn't help." Neither of them answered. Rick turned to the printer and started the contract. "We'll get you taken care of right away." Taken care of. Not apologized to, not acknowledged, just processed, now that the machine had done what her word could not. Nadine did not let that stand. "No," she said, "before you print anything, I want you to explain why I was offered a more expensive walk-up rental before either of you used the live confirmation code on my screen." That hit hard enough that even Tiffany looked up sharply. Rick's expression tightened. There was a misunderstanding. Nadine shook her head once. "No, there was a working reservation. There was a visible confirmation. And there was a decision to treat me like the problem before you check thoroughly." A long pause. The line behind her stayed quiet, which told her everything. Everybody understood now. Tiffany tried the softer route. "We were just following what the terminal showed." Nadine looked at her. "No, you were following your first conclusion." That landed because it was true. And truth, once named in a public place, takes up an awful lot of room. Rick printed the contract in silence, slid it toward her, and finally said the words he should have started with. "I apologize." Tiffany, after a beat too long, added, "Sorry." Nadine took the paperwork, not graciously, not cruelly, just without helping them feel better. Then she said, "I'd like the district manager's name." Rick blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'd like the district manager's name and the station incident report number if you file one. Also, I want it noted in the account that the reservation was valid, visible, and delayed at the desk." The businessman behind her nodded once, as if to himself. Rick handed over a card from under the counter, wrote a number on the back. Still not meeting her eyes fully. Nadine took the card, the keys, and the printed contract. Then she said one last thing before stepping away. "The dangerous thing about this kind of treatment is that you can always call it a system issue afterward. But somehow the system only became searchable once I stopped letting your doubt do the work." Then she walked toward the garage exit with her roller bag clicking behind her like punctuation. The air in the garage smelled like concrete dust and exhaust. She reached the car, put the bag in the trunk, and stood with both hands on the open door for 5 full seconds before getting in. That was when the adrenaline arrived. Late, as it often does. Not because she had won, because she had been made to fight for something she had already secured correctly. She called her sister before pulling out. "Hey," said Monique on the second ring. You get the car? Nadine sat in the driver's seat, looking through the windshield at rows of rental numbers and fluorescent lights. Yeah, she said. Eventually. Monique heard it immediately. What happened? Nadine told her. Not dramatically, which somehow made it sound worse. When she finished, Monique was quiet for a second. Then, of course the code worked. Yes. And of course they found it after making you feel like you were lying. Yes, Monique exhaled. File the complaint. Oh, I am. Nadine filed it from the hotel an hour later. Time she arrived, names, the confirmation code, the walk-up upsell, the refusal to search properly, the supervisor's involvement, the exact wording, the delay. She included screenshots from the app with timestamped confirmation details, a photo of the printed contract created only after the code was manually entered, the district manager card, everything. By 10:15 the next morning, she had a voicemail from customer relations. By noon, another from regional operations. By evening, an email from the airport station manager asking for the opportunity to discuss the incident in more detail. That was how you knew the paperwork had teeth. 3 days later, she took the call from regional operations on speaker while reviewing slide decks in her office. A polished white woman named Cheryl Evans began with the standard phrase, "We regret your experience." Nadine let that sit there for half a beat. Then she said, "Do you regret the experience? Or do you regret that I documented what happened?" Silence. Then Cheryl, to her credit, adjusted. "We regret the conduct at the desk." Good, Nadine said. Start there. So they did. The station had retrained on confirmation code retrieval. The desk pair had been formally counseled. The upsell attempt under active reservation dispute had been flagged. The account was credited. A note was placed on her profile for direct executive service review if future issues arose. Useful, not enough. Nadine listened, then said, "You need to understand something. The problem was not that the code eventually worked. The problem was that my valid reservation was treated as less trustworthy than your staff's suspicion until the screen did what my voice apparently could not." Cheryl did not argue. That mattered. Not because it fixed everything, because too many institutions spend the whole call trying to preserve innocence rather than understand harm. 2 weeks later, Nadine was back at another airport, another rental desk, another business trip. This time, when she gave her name, the clerk smiled and said, "Ms. Brooks, I see your executive fast-track profile. Your car's ready. No problem, no pause, no verification theater." Oh, it should have felt normal. Instead, it felt like a glimpse of how much unnecessary friction people like her were expected to absorb as ordinary. That was the truer lesson. The version most people would tell was simple. A black woman's rental reservation was questioned. The confirmation code lit up. The reservation was there all along. But the sharper version was this. A black professional did everything right, booked correctly, arrived on time, presented proof, and still got treated like a probable error before she got treated like a customer. A clerk and supervisor were more willing to sell her a higher-priced replacement than to fully search the system already holding her reservation. And only when the confirmation code lit up on the screen for everyone to see did the room stop acting like her certainty was the suspicious thing. That is what prejudice often looks like in travel. Not shouting, not slurs, just "I'm not seeing it" said with enough confidence to make you work harder for what was already yours until the confirmation code lights up. And then suddenly the reservation they said didn't exist becomes visible all at once, along with the real reason it took so long to find. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe and stay close. There are more stories like this one waiting.